Good afternoon, Elder Justice Warriors. Thank you for joining us this week. I hope you've had a wonderful January and February and are eager to dive back in with us today. My name is Nicole Howell, and I am your facilitator for these monthly learning sessions. Today, we are joined, this would not be possible were it not for the sponsorship and facilitation of several of our sponsors. But before we get there, we have an interactive session today. So I want to encourage everyone to use the chat and the Q&A function. Great time to get started is right now. Go ahead and add your name and your organization and kind of what brought you here to us today. So tell us what kind of Elder Justice Warrior you are. We also have closed captioning and ASL available via the Zoom feed. Please avail yourselves of those options. And those are provided today by our sponsors. However, I want to remind you, we are here on the third Thursday of every month from 12 to 1. We will be back here next month with one of your favorites, Elder Justice expert, Paul Greenwood. He's going to be doing a retrospective of how the field of elder abuse and elder justice has changed over his time as a district attorney. We want to thank our sponsors and planning partners who make this possible, including Kaiser Permanente, the Archstone Foundation, John Muir Health, and California Department of Social Services. Now, with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. And this is a bit of a different kind of conversation. Normally, we are joined by experts who tell us how to do things and are much more clinical and detached. And those are important lessons to have. But sometimes as practitioners working in the field of elder justice, we come across instances where we feel like, gosh, how could I have helped that some person a little bit more? Or how could someone be the victim of abuse when we put out so many resources and so much information? And this is a conversation, frankly, between friends. We are going to be joined today by my friend Shirley Krohn, who is an elder abuse expert. Shirley has spent the last 22 years being engaged in efforts to bring awareness to the many faces of elder abuse and to aging communities across the state. She's been a contributor and editor to a national newsletter focusing on issues impacting the elderly and disabled communities. She's been an active member of several organizations, including the California Elder Justice Work Group, California Senior Legislature, the director of the Fair Lending Consortium, and board chair of the Elder Financial Protection Network. She is a local member of the California Senior Legislature since 2006 and a leader and member of the Contra Costa Advisory Council on Aging. Shirley has worked for many years on various pieces of legislation that help to improve the quality of life for seniors in California and beyond. And I am proud to say that Shirley is my friend. And in recent months, Shirley also was the victim of an online scam. And so she has bravely talked about the issue on our local news network, which we'll share the clip with you. And she has also agreed to talk with us today. So often I hear my team members, right, we don't know how to intervene in abuse, and we want to know how to work with those who've experienced it in a more sensitive light. And so today we are going to talk to our friend Shirley, who has done so much for the field of elder justice and elder abuse prevention, about her experience. I want to ask everyone to please be kind and remember that Shirley is bravely sharing her story and has agreed to do it with us here in the Elder Justice Lunch and Learn community. And I want to go ahead and welcome Shirley Crone with us. Shirley?
Hello.
Hey, Shirley. It's so good to see you all the way out there in California.
Yeah. I'm impressed with the number of people that have signed on for this.
Oh, it's going to be great. Folks really want to hear your story. And I know many of us really can learn from it. So thank you for being brave and having this conversation.
Well, I'm going to tell you, brave is probably not the right answer. Just scared to death of anything like this happening to anybody else.
Yeah, that's honest. And we're going to use that fear to help protect other seniors. So let's start off by talking about what happened. So you, like everyone else, have been in the middle of a pandemic for nearly 2 years. and it's coming on the holiday time, and tell us what happened.
Well, I think before I get into the actual story itself, I would like to explain that being involved in the pandemic and being, safe in my house and whatnot is difficult for me because I'm usually out there talking to people, attending meetings, being more actively involved. And all of a sudden I find myself stuck at home and bored. Okay, not a whole lot of excitement. And yeah, my husband's here, but he's hard of hearing and I'm hard of hearing. And so we just yell at each other and laugh a lot. So, that's fine, but it's not exactly the way I want my life to be. So what happened is let me see, I can tell you exactly. On December 2nd, I think, or right at the end of November, I got a message on Messenger from a fellow who claimed to be a colleague of mine and a friend. And I had no reason at that time to doubt it. But he, did the normal, yeah, how are you? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And then he proceeded to go on and he says, well, I've got to tell you something that's really exciting. He says, I just was, contacted by the federal government saying that I had received $200,000 and without any questions asked and no income tax or anything. And I says, well, that sounds like a scam for sure. And so he continued to talk and he says, well, to tell you the truth, the money was delivered the next day as was promised in my original conversation. So it just raised all kinds of red flags to me. But on the other hand, I was curious. I think I was looking for a little excitement. Something.
You got the letter, like you got this note from a friend that you know. And I think for the world, Shirley is a very savvy senior. She's on email and her phone and Facebook on a regular basis. She has an intergenerational group of friends. So it wasn't abnormal for her to get a message from a friend on Facebook. That was very normal, especially around the holidays, wishing you like a happy holiday season, checking in to make sure you're safe and well.
No, that's very true. And, even here at home during the pandemic, I spent most of my time in front of the computer, checking email, going on AOL, checking any messages or whatever. And when there's nothing, I'll go and find a game or something, just something. And then I'd get up and I can hardly walk, My legs are, I'm stiffer than anything. And then I have to get up and walk around. And so, it was not pretty, let me tell you. But I got this note and I very suspicious, but also very curious. So I thought, I think I'm going to follow up with this and see exactly what's going on. So I got back to him and I says, well, I think this is a scam, but let me investigate further. Who did you contact, or, how do I contact this person? So he gave me an email of a woman who claims to be the director or something of this organization. So I said, okay, so I got off with him and I input this email address, and probably no more than 10 or 15 minutes later, I heard from her, which again was very suspicious. She knew she had a hot one on the line, I think. Anyway, so I told her that I had talked to him and she was very gracious and, everything was fine. And she says, well, send me some information about you, name, address, age, that kind of general information. So I said, okay, I will do that. And again, within 15 minutes later, after I sent that off to her, she says, well, congratulations. I need to tell you right now that you qualify for a $300,000 gift from the government. And I go, oh, well, that's interesting, And she says, and you don't need to, do anything as far as taxes or anything. And she said, if you want to follow up with it, we'll just continue to talk and I'll give you the instructions and whatnot. I'm not going to go into.
Shirley, can we I think it's important for people to understand that at the same time, there were lots of various news stories about loans and lending out there to help save businesses and keep renters in their homes. So there was a constant barrage in the reputable media about resources for folks during COVID. So to hear this email and get this, it wouldn't be out of the norm for you to investigate something.
That's right. And in addition to this, I have to tell you that I have been getting, phone call after phone call. Every one of them I've blocked, because they were indeed scams, and I was getting really upset with that. So when this came along, it sounded kind of interesting and I had to go for it. Mm-hmm. So what happened then was just a whole lot of messages back and forth and instructions and whatnot. And came to the point where she said, okay, now in order to get the money to you first thing in the morning, I need to get paperwork signed off and get our delivery person notified. And so I'm going to need to get some money from you to pay for that. I said, okay, what does that amount to? And then she proceeded to go into, I need some gift cards and I need to get everything sent to my contact in, God forbid, Florida.
So Shirley, you're a very savvy person. When you first heard that, gosh, you were going to owe $1,100 to get $300,000, was your spidey sense going off, or were you still really believing that this was a legitimate function of the United States government?
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I believed it, but I was still curious enough to follow up on it to see exactly where it would lead. Okay. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I think I talked to my daughter and told her about it. And she was very, very suspicious. And she ended up calling the head reporter for Channel 7, Dan Ashley, and told him about it. And he in turn passed it along to his 7 on Your Side producer. And so while I'm going through the process of talking and, filling out, making information possible and whatnot, come to find out that the producer of the show on Channel 7 was very suspicious, and he ended up getting in touch with me. And by that time I had several conversations under my belt and proceeded in, getting the gift cards, and I ended up sending $1,100.
Let's talk about that. So they said you owe us $1,100 in gift cards. So you had your husband drive you to like the local drugstore or grocery store to get those cards?
No, I went, I said, I told him, I says, well, you're never going to guess what this is about. And told him that, they want $1,100 and whatnot. So I says, I'll follow through with this. At this point, I'm not at a point where some people are by saying, if I get that kind of money, it's going to make me broke. Mm-hmm. I still was open to hearing more. Shame on me. Okay. So
you went to the grocery store. Did they specify a certain kind of gift card, or they just said,
yes?
Okay. What'd they say?
Google Play, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, I was only able to get 2 cards for $200 each, because right at that moment, my credit union canceled my credit card. Mm-hmm. And so I was not able to do anything else. So I had to go and get cash and then prepare a package to send via Federal Express to Florida. Mm-hmm. And it's just, by that time I was pretty suspicious. And the fellow that contacted me in the beginning came back and said, well, how you doing and what's happening? And, he kind of followed up with me. The thing that gave me great suspicions, there are 2 things. Mm-hmm. Number one, when she addressed me, she called me madam. That's not a U.S. normal way to talk to somebody, especially another woman. And his discussion with me was obviously from somebody whose English was not his original language. So then I knew it was somebody from overseas somewhere, you know, where most of these scams come from. A lot of them do anyway. Anyway, it was at this point that I started to make my own phone calls to the police department and to the fraud people at the, no, they were, it was part of the police department.
Mhm.
And then I contacted a friend of mine at Social Security, and he gave me the direct number in Washington to make a report. And from there, I got the name of the Social Security agent who is located here in the county over in Richmond, California. So I had all of these contacts that I was, you know, on the phone constantly, giving them all the information I could. And, you know, I was getting a lot of good information, and I was getting, you know, information supplied to the Social Security people, like my number and a lot of other pieces of information, so that they could keep a track and find out what was happening, if there was any danger of, you know, getting my information stolen. And
Well, I want to highlight, can we just highlight something, Shirley, which is, you were saying when you were getting this email from the official, who was a woman, and you're communicating, you also then got another message on Facebook from the person you thought was your friend. And I want
Yes.
people to understand where they were sort of coming at you from both sides, of the person who was
Right.
giving you the money,
Good
and then
point.
someone who you thought was indeed, you know, a legitimate source, a friend and longtime colleague.
Right.
And as someone who
Now,
is your
let
friend,
me go one step further on that, Nicole, because when I got a call, or when I got the original message from this person, this fellow that I knew, he had a picture of my actual friend, which had to be stolen off of Facebook or something else to have that, right? And my friend's name, full name. I'm not going to mention it, but it was really interesting to see how professional these people can be in getting that kind of information. And people should know that, you know, this is not a fly by night in, you know, I mean, ultimately it turned out to be, but in the beginning, when they're attempting to set everything up, they were very professional, you know, in their ability to get information from me until I turned it off. So
yeah. So you really had these folks who were coming after you as friends, and then you have this relationship now with this other fraudster. Can you
Right.
tell us how long that took from their first message to you to the time when you sent off the gift cards? About how many days was that?
that was just a matter of a couple of days.
Mhm.
In fact, I can say this whole effort, this whole scam probably went on for no more than, 2 weeks, perhaps. In the meantime, I did get a call from the producer of this show on Channel 7
Mhm.
and had a long conversation with him about it and whatnot. Before I go any further, I have to show you this. You tell me if you can see this okay.
I do, yeah. Oh, they sent that to you.
This was sent to me by this woman that I'd been talking to, and
Okay.
I laughed. I laughed like hell when I saw it. I thought, what the heck is this? Federal grants, federal funding program, you know, and my name and address and $300,000. I'm going to frame this. Okay, this is going up in my office as a constant reminder.
Uh-huh.
But the producer, after having quite a long conversation with him, he says, do you mind if I tape this? And I thought, oh my God. I said, no, I don't want, you mean to be shown on TV? He says, yes. And I said, no, I can't allow myself to be exposed as being this stupid, you know? And I said, no. And then he said, and I changed my mind. He said, let's face it, if it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. And I hesitated and I said, okay, let's go for it. Because I thought to myself, every time I've been out doing a presentation to a group of elders around the state, there was always one or two people in the audience that would say, you know what, this would never happen to me, never. And I thought about that as he was saying that, because this was never ever happened to me, and look what's happening to me right now. So we can't be too confident when these kinds of situations are brought up. Anyway, he taped me and asked a lot of questions and whatnot. And then at the end, he says, I'll let you know when it's going to be put on TV. And I thought, oh, Lordy, I don't want this. Anyway, I let a couple of people know. I think I let you know, and a couple of my buddies from the county know. And I have to say, in all fairness, the support I got from my buddies from Contra, Costa County, the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, were so wonderful to me. Absolutely wonderful, supportive, there for me, whatever. And I so appreciate that kind of support. So now time.
So
Go ahead.
Well, thank you, because I think that's an important component. Is normally during normal times, we would be seeing you probably 3 times a month at various meetings or lunch or talking about an important issue. So your friends, we would have been much more in touch with you, but because of COVID, we weren't seeing each other as much, and we weren't checking on you in the same way. And so there's a way in which your community, which we have some, I know when I saw the video, I felt really responsible for it. So I'm curious, we've got some questions coming in the chat, and I think it bears noting, as you have reflected back on the situation, was there like a point at which you feel like, gosh, that there was something that could have been done, maybe something that could have been said to you that would have stopped you from purchasing the gift cards? If the attendant at the drugstore had said, ma'am, is there a reason you need, $600 in Google Play gift cards?
Yeah.
Is there something that could have happened, or people that could have interjected that they would have stopped you from engaging and buying the gift cards?
At I ended up going to 3 different drugstores to get, see if I could get the gift cards, and all of them were denied because my credit card was denied. And one of them said, I think with the first one I went to, said, well, are you sure this is, this is what you want to do? And I said, yeah, this is, I'm doing something for my grandchildren or something. I can't remember what I said, but I lied and covered it up, right? And if I hadn't covered it up, I can only imagine the scene in the store, with other customers around and the people behind. All I wanted to do was to get out of there and get back in my car and go. So I'm responsible for that. And believe me, I know that, and I have to live with that. And I know that's one of the questions about, didn't you verify that, all of this was happening? If they sent one message to me, they sent me 1,000. Don't let anybody know about this, because otherwise we're not going to be able to send you the money.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's, I think, something we want to really highlight is abusers are cunning, whether there's someone we know or someone we don't know. So these folks were calling you, and were they calling and messaging you?
The woman the guy that I had talked to originally, I felt that he had told this woman about me. Because I told him I'd called the FBI and Social Security, and I recorded all this and, filed a claim and whatnot. And I was sure he would tell her. Okay. Mm-hmm. She came back to me a couple of times and said, you're not supposed to say anything to anybody. And I did not. I ignored all of her follow-on emails or messages, you know, and I didn't do anything, but I was hoping that when I tell my story, others will be smarter than I was at the time.
Yeah.
You know, but
And I
anyway,
think,
go ahead.
well, I think you also said something important. You said, I said I was going to do something for my grandchildren. And when we've talked, at times you thought, gosh, this could be a fraud, but I'm a little bored. Let's play the game. And also that you thought you were going to have an opportunity to buy something for your grandchildren, a house for them, really secure their future in these uncertain times.
Right.
So what I want people to hear is that, again, these scammers are cunning. They contacted you with a photo from a friend that you knew and you trusted. They held themselves out to be professionals or within the federal government. And then they also really pulled on that idea of helping your family. And so it's really easy to say it would never happen to me, but that is a potent blend of loneliness due to COVID and opportunity to create a stability for your family. And I want people to really think about for a second, any of us could be caught at the wrong moment. You know, what is that they say of don't make a decision when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? We are all of those things after 2 years in the pandemic.
Oh God, yeah, no doubt about it. And
right.
You know, I talking about it, and well, the first thing that happened before I'm here today is that it was on Channel 7, and I was able to get that word out to a few people, but not as many as I wanted. And I've got it recorded, and it's here at home. But it was an interesting discussion with this fellow, and it was a way for me to clear the guilt that I had by talking about it openly and honestly. I wasn't trying to, you know, cover anything up. And then after that, obviously, a lot more people got involved and a lot more information got out there, and then I started openly talking about it to people, not because I was so excited about the possibility of getting this money, but like I said earlier, if it can happen to me, being somebody who goes out and reports to people about the dangers of these kinds of crimes, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone, depending on what your situation is at the time. You know, it can happen to anyone.
And thankfully, as you said, it's not going to make it so you can't eat or pay your bills, like you're able to absorb that. But I'm curious, once the money was gone and you described to me like really understanding that it had been a fraud, that then you reached out to your friend from Facebook and you talked to them, right? And I understand he said that, no, that message wasn't me. I didn't get a loan from the federal government.
Yeah. I don't know, Nicole. I still don't have a lot of answers for my own behavior, other than to say, yes, dear, I'm guilty. I did this, and I'm paying the price for it. But the interesting thing is that after the show on Channel 7, I went right back into the work that I was doing, and you know, it allowed me to sort of stay away from it for a while, so that it wasn't number one on my thought process every single day. So anyway, it's just, you know, I'm okay now. You know. Now
that you're past it, you know, you said you're really kind of aware, you're kind of vigilant and nervous. I think this is a part where we as providers can learn, which is how can we work with individuals like you who have experienced a fraud? How can we work with you in a way that feels the least judgmental to you? Because I know with my parents, sometimes I have a tendency to treat them like they're children, even though they're not. And I wonder if that's maybe something that we as service providers do as well. So tell us about how we can work with individuals like you who've been the victim of a fraud in a way that makes it so you're going to be honest with us and not hide it, because there is so much shame.
Good question. I think first of all, I've got children that are younger than me, and I'm in my 80s. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. And I when you have somebody younger than you giving you advice and telling you what you should be doing or whatever, this is not necessarily the case with me, but it's just a general thing that happens between parents and their children. And I think the way that it really happens is if the children are not involved actively in these kinds of situations where they don't have any understanding of how this impacts their parents or whatever. So my recommendation would be is if you are a parent that starts getting advice from your younger children about why did you do this, and you should have done that, and how come you didn't call, and blah blah blah. I think that's where you have to say, thank you for caring. I'm doing everything I can right now. And if you really want to help, what I would like for you to do is just stick by me so that that I'm actually looking after this and whatnot. But don't try to superimpose yourself on top of me, because that doesn't help either. Then I feel like I'm, defending myself in front of my own family. And I didn't get any of that from my own friends. So, everybody that I talked to, all my buddies, were very openly supportive. Even the people I talk to that I deal with in Sacramento, our state capital, were the same way. So I feel very blessed about that.
Yeah. I mean, I Shirley, as your friend, when I saw the story, I felt, and I know some of your other friends, like I felt responsible, like I hadn't been looking out for you enough, or I should have noticed something was happening and checked in on you. It really does impact the collective community.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's anything that we could have said or could have done to convince you that you were being scammed? Like when you were in the thick of it, if I would have found out and said, Shirley, no, this is a scam, do you think you would have believed it? Or do you think you were so far in, you needed to play it out?
Well, I'll tell you, I honest to God, in the very beginning, even talking to that guy that contacted me, and I said, sounds like a scam to me, right? And so I sort of had that impression. At the same time, I was curious as heck to find out what all this was about. Actually, True Confessions, I was thinking of using it as an exercise to expose this scam somehow. Like go along with it and get as much information as I could, so that I could call the FBI and say, this is who it is and where they're at, and this is what they want, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have enough guts for that, but whatever.
It sounds like you were really sort of caught between this, wanting it to be real to buy something for your grandchildren, but also recognizing it seemed too good to be true. That's all true. Wrapped up in this time of loneliness and uncertainty. Because again, let's remember, December, the news was very full of the Omicron variant, and it felt very 2020 again. So there was a lot of consternation happening out there in the world.
Well, especially during the pandemic, it seemed to be even more so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So post this fraud, I know you told me you've been getting a lot of phone calls, and so you actually had to block numbers. And I think this is an important point for people to understand, that once you've been the victim of one fraud, those scammers tell their friends and neighbors, so to speak. And so you have to put some things in place to make sure now that you are more protected. And I think one thing you did is actually telling the truth helps to protect you, because all of us are now asking you how you're feeling and what's going on. You've really brought light to that.
Well, one thing that was very annoying to me is that I was getting, I'm sure everybody has gotten the scam call you know, your automobile warranty is coming due, blah, blah, blah. You know, I've had that a dozen times. And plus there's the grandma scam where grandma, it's your grandson and I'm stuck and I want some money. Can you send me blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the one call that I got was from the Chronicle, the newspaper, right? And they were talking to me about something. And I said, well, you don't need to worry because I'm not interested. They wanted to get me to subscribe to something else. And so I hung up on that one, right? But then I had 6 in a row right after that, not from the same person and not from the same phone number, from the Chronicle, right? So then I had to pull out the instructions on how to block calls on my phone because I didn't know how to do it. And then I did it and I got all of those calls that I blocked and I got them erased off the system. So then I thought, okay, I'm clean. Now I don't have any more calls to block. Not so. You still
So Shirley, I was just, so the phone number that you had given, did you provide that when they were asking for your information, your name, your birth date? No. So how did they get your phone number? Do you know?
Well, you mean from the scam artist that I'd heard from before? That could be, because that was one of the original questions asked, was my phone number. Okay. So that could very well be. Okay. One of the calls was from one number. In fact, I've got it right here. One of the calls, the same number, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, 8 times. And I was like going crazy. I was so upset and annoyed by this. And that's when I got out the instructions on how to get rid of the scams. And now I do that, you know, because I don't take them. I don't answer my phone at all unless I know the number.
Right.
That's one of the things that I started.
Well, that's great. But I also, I feel like we got a great commenter here of like, we don't want you to lose autonomy because this happens. And so it's a fine line of protecting yourself and yet still being brave to engage in the world. I want to invite our community here to go ahead. Some of you have done so, to drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A. I want to ask everyone to please be respectful and recognize that Shirley and I are friends here, and we're just sharing with you a personal conversation that we've had that we think is important to protect seniors. So go ahead and drop your questions. So you had given your phone number out. How have you talked about this with your extended family since this happened? Because you did this because you wanted to do something nice for your family.
Right.
Has anyone, you know, given any, have you talked about it with other people besides your husband and your daughter?
I did to my grandson and told him that it was a scam. So that was right off the bat, you know, because I didn't talk to them right immediately. You know, I had to get clear with myself how I was going to deal with this, right? And then, but then I shared it with the close relatives and whatnot. Anyway, it just, you know,
comes and goes sometimes.
I screwed up. What can I say?
And Shirley, you're human. And I think that's what needs to really be noted here is that, you know, I am a few years younger than Shirley, but I make mistakes all the time. But no one assumes that I can't handle my affairs. But we do that with older adults. We assume they had a temporary lapse in judgment that they are not able to manage their affairs. And that's what I really want to highlight for you.
Yeah.
Also to highlight, you know, Shirley, when you were sending the gift cards, and you were sending it, I think you said to Florida, was that right?
Yes.
And the money, did they tell you what that was for? Like it was to transport the money or to pay the messenger?
They gave me the address and the person to send it to, and told me to put it, send it via Federal Express, which I did. And And that's the last thing after that, I didn't do anything. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's scary, Nicole, because, you know, uh, I hate to say it, but one of the reasons why I hate the phone, we get back to the phone again, is if my phone is ringing and I'm in the other room, it takes me forever to walk to answer the damn phone, and then to find out that it's a scam and I'm hanging up and I'm getting angry and all that. And how do I block these calls and blah, blah, blah. It's just a nuisance. It's a real nuisance, you know.
And they just wore you down at some point. Like that's really
Yeah.
what happened. You were lonely, it was cold, you just got worn down.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell other like seniors out there that they can do to protect themselves from scam like this? I know you and I talked about what you could have done to protect yourself. So I know one of the things you said is you could have called your friend on the phone who sent you the initial message and say, is this you?
Yeah. Now that's the first thing I should have done. Okay. So I'm guilty of not doing that. I should have done that because when I ended up calling him and said, have you gotten a lot of money lately? And he said, what are you talking about? And then I explained it to him. He says, no, absolutely not. That has not happened to me. This is, it was a scam. And so I said, okay, thank you. And that was it. I didn't push it any further. Then he went on to Facebook and sent the note out to everybody that if you see a friend request from me and I ignore it, don't be, if I don't know you, I'm not going to respond or something like that. But anyway, he did that right away.
Mm-hmm.
I should have done it.
Well, no, it's now that we know, right? So I think when you remember when we get those friend requests from people and they're from a friend already on Facebook or they use a different photo, it's okay to be discerning. I like to think of it, do you guys, if you remembers Jessica Fletcher from the 80s Murder, She Wrote, she would always just ask a lot of questions of, would you consider, and that whining is your favorite dog, Walter, Shirley, I apologize.
He wants to see me.
He probably does. He's ready to play. But I think that's really like just asking good questions to protect yourself. And if things seem too good to be true, don't assume they're not true. Just assume they need more investigation.
Right.
So Shirley, since then, have you put any, or are you considering putting any fraud alert on your credit cards to make sure that nothing is able to be
already done? Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the credit card that was impacted, I had to deal with the fraud people at the credit union, and so I had to get a new card. So I did that, and I activated it, and I put it away. We haven't used it since. So I've been watching it, online to see if there's anything coming up suspicious on that for whatever reason. And so far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we've got the fraud alerts on your card. You're telling your family things. You're being vigilant on Facebook. Tell me what gives you hope about the future. Like you've shared your story, which helps to make sure that someone else is not the victim. So what do you hope for the future for older adults around frauds?
I hope if there were older adults on this call that they would look at me and say, I don't want to be like her. I don't want to be a victim or whatever. And if you are a social worker or an APS or, somebody else that's in the business, that you repeat as often as you need to. If it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. If somebody, or you can even you don't have to use my name, but I have a friend, I have a friend that was a victim, and she told me if it happened to her, it can happen to anyone. Don't assume that you're not in any danger. That's not the right way to approach it, in my opinion.
I think you're right. And I also want to say everyone now has a friend Shirley. Everyone on this call or who watches this or share it with your colleagues can say, my friend Shirley was scammed and she's an expert. I know I use this to talk to my parents about any concerns I have of, hey, my friend Shirley is an expert, and if she can be scammed, anyone can be. And so I want us all to go back and to share this with our colleagues and with our team members about how older adults are asking to be treated and what we can do. I think from this, what I've learned is that loneliness and isolation, that actually is a precursor to boredom and possibly scam and fraud. I now see that as a situation that really has possible negative effects.
Yep.
So we are going to go ahead and wrap up here today. Shirley, my friend, I want to thank you for your candor and honesty and bravery here with our community. You really, it's an example to all of us, and just the warrior that you are. So I can't wait to see what you use this for and how we, your community, everyone on this call, how we can help you to achieve that goal. So I just want to thank you so much for your.
One quick message to everybody on this call. One of my very active activities before the pandemic was promoting and trying to get support in Washington, D.C. for a stamp out elder abuse postal stamp. Okay. And that all ended. That campaign ended when the pandemic came. I may bring that up again. So you may hear about that. And if you do, this is where you heard it from.
Shirley, we are going to get on that bandwagon. Everybody here, you tell us what we can do or who we need to write or call, and we will do it.
Absolutely.
Also want to say to everyone, thank you for joining us today. We'll be sending out the recording next week along with some links and resources. Please join us here next month. We're going to drop the registration link in the chat. We are going to be joined by one of our dear friends, Paul Greenwood, former San Diego District Attorney for elder abuse. He is recently retired, and he's going to do a bit of an analysis and a retrospective about the history of elder abuse and what's changed in the field now that he's entering a new stage of his career. So I hope you'll be back next month to join us for that event. And I want to thank you for all of your work out there in the field. You really are saving people like Shirley and others through your work. And so I appreciate all of you, and we will see you back here next month.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Shirley.